Hi, everybody. Jean Humbrecht here. If you are watching our weekly, monthly, whatever you want to call it, webinar, it's a weird time. You probably already know who I am if you are on my Facebook page or seeing this video. But if you do not, I am the lawyer you can trust to fight for you every step of the way to help make sure that a life crisis does not have to last a lifetime. So what does that mean? I am a criminal defense attorney. My main office is in Manassas, Virginia, and I practice throughout Northern Virginia. But that's enough about me. Today I have two very special guests that I want to introduce, and I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to mess anything up. I want to thank Tracey, Barrett, and Graham Pruitt for joining me today. We have actually a very interesting and different webinar today. We're going to be talking about how real estate collaboration divorce specialists can help in the course of divorce, the divorce process, mediation, litigation, but that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to turn it over to Tracey and Graham. But Tracey Barrett works with Century 21 Redwood. She practices real estate in Northern Virginia. She works with both buyers and sellers and focuses on education-based collaboration approach to real estate. Graham Pruitt is a loan officer with Intercoastal Mortgage and is a divorce specialist. They both have a designation in real estate collaboration divorce. So with that, Tracey, Graham, I am going to turn it over to you. Whoever wants to go first, just have at it, and I'm going to interrupt with questions whenever they pop into my head, which might be a lot.
Cool. We encourage the questions, and if anybody's watching online, definitely do it. Thanks so much for having us out today. We were just joking that I've got a 15-year-old that's about to drive, so you have a target-rich environment among my peers who may have to defend their children from making dumb mistakes as they learn how to drive. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Graham, why don't you start out and give everybody an idea of what it is we do?
Cool. Tracey and I are really focusing our practices on the real estate side, on the mortgage side, in helping the legal community when real estate's involved in a divorce case. And there is a lot to that statement, but essentially she specializes in obviously on the real estate side, and I specialize on the mortgage side. And when two people are separating, you have property division, and that property division is final. And so what we have discovered and what we've learned is that in a lot of cases, it's just not done properly through the process. So we're really here to help those people because they probably are the most underserved people going through a real estate situation. And typically in a divorce case, you've got, either the house is going to get sold or somebody wants to stay in it and retain it. And so that's where our services on both sides come in. And so if the whole part about being underserved is that when they're really working just with the attorneys aren't realtors and they're not mortgage people. And so when they're doing these marital settlement agreements, these things are, they're put together in a way that both parties have to perform once it's finalized. And so what we're here to do is to help them prepare so that they can perform on that agreement that they have. And we're going to get into that. And there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about. I think it's a much needed service in that space. And I think without further ado, Tracey, you want to say something about that, or should I share my screen?
Let's share the screen and get going from there, because I think what's important, I will say something after all. So our end user is, of course, going to be the person or the couple that is going through the divorce. But then ultimately, we are here to serve as part of the greater team with the attorneys that are working towards that collaborative effort to get through the divorce as painful, or as painless rather, and collaborative as possible with the least amount of money being spent. So with that being said, Graham's going to share his screen.
Okay.
Maybe.
It shows that it's sharing. Do you guys see it? Yeah, let's see.
I think I have to allow it. There we go.
There we go.
There it is.
There we go.
Right. Very cool. So, Tracey, you or I?
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going, Graham. You're doing great.
Okay. Cool. So Tracey and I are presenting here this real estate. Can you see me sort of circling? Can you see my pointer?
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to just try to draw your attention. So we have this designation. It's called the RCS-D designation. It's a real estate collaboration specialist in divorce. Tracey and myself here. Just to give it a little bit of, this is the lady that actually put the entire course together, Professor Kelly Murray, co-founder of DivorceThisHouse.com and the RCS-D designation training. She obviously is very smart. She went to Harvard Law School. She went to Stanford. She's a faculty at a top 20 law school. And she really put this curriculum together, and it was put together extremely well. And I tell everybody that the education that we got from it was just second to none. So it was fantastic. And really what we do at the end of the day here is we help family lawyers and mediators complete the case file regarding the secured house debt, and then keeping the house through divorce mortgage guidance and house due diligence. And so it's a mouthful, but we're going to go through what that looks like. And Tracey, anything that you want to say up until this point?
I think the biggest thing that we got out of our training is that a lot of times the real estate agent is called at the very end. Everybody's decided what's going to happen, and now it's time to sell the house, and the assets will be divided as negotiated, etc. Same thing with the mortgage situation. It's, again, one of those things that happens at the very, very end. So the long story short is this completely changes the timing that these two professionals, the mortgage professional and the real estate professional, enter into the divorce process. So all of this that we're going to talk about is happening during the discovery phase of divorce. You've decided you want to do the divorce. You have a period of time to find as to what the research is that needs to go into it and how things will then be negotiated out. And then you go to mediation and negotiation on how things will happen. We come in during that point in order to help with the education, in order to have the clients make more informed decisions moving forward throughout that mediation prior to things being permanent. So with that said, I'll kick it back to you again, because I want to focus on the mortgage side of this first, and then get into the real estate side of it second.
Sure.
But ultimately, it's a team effort to get to the end game.
Yep.
Also want to point out one more thing. When we have been meeting with attorneys and working with attorneys in the past, this is an a la carte service. Each client and each divorce is unique. Everybody's assets are different, and how they need to get to the end game and finish line is different. So there may be times where a refinance is done, it's super clean, there's no need to sell the house, you just move forward, that's it. In other cases, it can be more complex. If you have professionals that you like to work with, appraisers, inspectors, things like that, we don't require you to use all aspects of our team. It is a la carte, and it is complimentary. So with that being said, Graham, take it away on the mortgage side.
Yeah, and just to kind of give you, so you know what we're talking about before we jump in. So the two spouses that are involved in this. One is what we're going to call the house spouse. Okay, and the house spouse is the person that generally wants to stay in the home, and then the out spouse is the other person that wants to leave and get off the mortgage and or sell the house. So those are the two things: the house spouse and the out spouse. So when we're talking about our why, so why do we specialize in this divorce real estate? Why do we do the divorce mortgage stuff? And it really just boils down to, we're in a business where we help people, and people going through a divorce need a lot of help. They need professionals to guide them through the process. And so one of the major things, one of the three whys, or one of the two whys is, number one is to preserve homeownership eligibility, because, and I've got my notes here, there can be, there's a lot of things that can happen during divorce that can impact people's credit scores. So that flows right into the second one, which is protecting the credit score of both spouses, so that once everything is final, they can perform and do what they want to do and achieve their goals. And so the third part of this is, it's really if they decide to sell the house or to refinance, that Tracey or I would really just be considered for the transaction. Most of our services we don't charge for. So, sitting down and talking to me about the mortgage part of that is a consultation that is free. And when you're talking about somebody who's spending, a considerable amount of money per hour for the team of lawyers that they're working with, this really can obviously can drive those costs down a little bit. So let's see here. So how do we help? On the lending side, so let me back up. There's 4 areas of house homework, and there's the mortgage side, there is title, there's insurance, and then there is the house itself and the condition of the property. So we're going to talk about the mortgage part, the mortgage homework. How can we help? So a couple things. We can help give information that may change how the attorneys structure the support. There are a lot of guidelines associated with the divorce on the mortgage side that most lenders are not aware of. In most cases, like me, before I started out on this, it was really, in a lot of cases, mortgage people are just tripping over divorce cases. And as they come in, it just so happens that it's a divorce case and they're trying to handle it and understand the guidelines as they go along. Well, if you're working with, an RCS-D like myself, and I'm also got a certified divorce lending professional designation, I've studied and taken tests, and I've done a lot of training to understand all the guidelines that are associated with going through a divorce on the mortgage side. So having somebody who knows what they're doing can actually really help structure the support terms that the spouses are working to figure out. So that's number one. We pre-qualify the HS, the house spouse, to make sure that he or she can refinance the home. If one of them wants to stay, why go into a situation where that property settlement agreement is final? Why not make sure that you can do what it is that you're looking to do? So a couple of things that we do, we identify credit challenges and help resolve them. I've noticed, and I've seen this in a lot of cases, is people that are in this situation, they may not be looking at their credit very closely. They may not be paying attention to bills that need to be paid. They may not know that they've got a medical bill that wasn't paid, that's a lien on their, that's impacting their credit score. So during the discovery phase, we're helping to identify any credit challenges that might impede their ability to refinance the home within the 6-month window or 1-year window that the settlement agreement states that they have to do. So, just some things that I've noticed that have gone wrong, failure to pay bills or sign documents, ongoing joint debt after the divorce. A lot of times people will, they've got this joint debt. We want to help and separate that before the whole thing. Cannot refi a joint mortgage because they were issued initially with 2 incomes. You've got somebody who buys a home, they're going on joint. Now they're getting separated and the income is split and they don't qualify to keep the house. Confusion, income sources that qualify for the mortgage. So there's when it comes to the income, there's certain requirements that have to be met to make sure that the underwriter, that we can actually use it as income. And then a big thing is a stay-at-home spouse that doesn't have a work history or much of a credit score. So when we get in early, we can identify these things and help with that. So we help evaluate the loan programs that they may qualify for. So, you've got VA, FHA, conventional. There's all kinds of different loan programs that we need to go through and help them figure out what they can qualify for. And then the big one is our services are free. We don't charge for the consultation. So when there's not clarity in that space on the mortgage side of what we're going to do, can we qualify? We bring a lot of clarity and a lot of information to that space right there. And I do want to just mention here. So, there's a couple things. There's some things that can happen, right? Foreclosure and bankruptcy. If after the divorce is finalized and someone's living in the house and they barely squeaked by on a refinance because they're, with their finances, and they can't afford that house and they can't make the payments, there's things that can happen. Foreclosure is one of the worst things that can happen to somebody, and we don't want to see that happen. So we're there to avoid that. We're there to avoid, ruined credit. Somebody not making a payment on a credit card because they're trying to get back at the other person. Stuff like that. And then the biggest thing, and Tracey can speak to this too, which is selling solo. You've got somebody who wants to stay in the house. They don't want to disrupt the children's lives. It turns out they really can't afford to stay there. And a year or two later, they decide, this house is too big. We don't need it. I just don't like being here. And then they have to sell the house and they've got to incur all those expenses themselves because they can't go back. You can't go back and ask the other spouse, hey, you got to cover half of these expenses. It's something that they have to deal with. And I want to really harp on the credit score part of this. So this is a study that was done by FICO, and it's a couple years old, but the credit reporting hasn't really changed. But if you look over here, consumer C starts out with a 780 credit score. They get a 30-day late on their mortgage, and now they're down to 670 or 690. In a lot of cases, here's what I see. I see people coming into a divorce that either are going to have higher credit scores or lower credit scores because they've run up stuff on credit cards. They haven't paid things on time, right? So if you look at this, someone started out at a 720 that gets a mortgage late, they're dropping down to a 630 or a 650. And at this stage in the game, it's very difficult to get somebody a loan with credit scores. Look at this. You really cannot get a loan with a credit score that low. So it's really important for consumer protection that we get in early on the mediation and discovery, and we find this stuff and we educate.
I just wanted to interrupt you for a second. I'm sorry. Sure. But you had mentioned this twice, discovery. I know what you mean. Sure. I'm not a family law attorney, though. Yep. I think we're going to have some family law attorneys watching this or watching the replay. And then also people who may be going through a divorce. Sure. If they have never been through the process before, could one of you guys maybe just kind of explain to them, mostly the clients, I guess, potential clients, what this whole process means and what discovery means, and things that they might not think about with the house and the mortgage when they decide, I want to get a divorce. Things that you have found maybe in your experience that people don't think about, that need to really understand why they need to go through this process with you guys.
Right. I think the easiest way to put it is once you decide to go through divorce, there is a period of time that's defined by the two attorneys that essentially they're going to dive deep into what you have, your assets, whether that's your savings account, retirement, medical leave, vacation time, what investments you have, real estate. It's in addition to that, it's going to be children. Do you have vacation homes? It's every single aspect of your life that will be investigated, discovered, so that you can then look at the whole big picture to figure out ultimately how those things will be divided between the two partners. And you have a finite amount of time to do that, but it's your opportunity to get the most information possible so that you can then make best decisions about it. So real estate is one aspect of discovery. Child custody is another aspect of discovery. Savings accounts, investment accounts, stocks, inheritance, anything like that are all part of the discovery process, so that you see the whole big picture and then can come to the table to see how that's going to then play out. It's really, really important. And the more it's like the who is it that does the more you know with the star? It's the more you know. The more information you have, the more informed decision you can make, and you can make the better approach so that there can be a win-win, or at least the best interest for the one party.
Yeah. So on the timeline, if you've got this timeline from where you petition for the divorce, then you get all the way to the decree and it's finalized. You petition, you meet, and then there's discovery, and then you mediate. And you try to figure out inside of there, obviously, if you're an attorney, you understand this, but that's where you go back and forth and negotiate. And so what we're doing is we're jumping in right before there so that you can come back to mediation and have all of the real estate stuff figured out what you want to do, so that you can negotiate the terms of that settlement agreement right there. And, part of this is this education part. And this is just showing you, coming back to this screen right here. Did we answer your question, Jean, or do you need some more clarity in that, do you think?
You did answer my question, but the only other thing I would add is, say the two spouses don't agree. Say they both want to stay in the house, or say one wants to sell the house and the other doesn't. Is that where this whole process comes is beneficial? Because one spouse might say, I'm going to stay in the house. I want to make the mortgage payments. Whatever. I'm just making up an example, but right. Then throughout this process, maybe you could see that would not, you could basically show them, okay, if you're going to stay in the house, this is what the mortgage payments are going to end up being. I'm just trying to surmise.
Where you're going with that is real simple. People are going to go into it with I think I'm going to want this. They have an idea of what they want. During discovery, That's the reality check. There's the fantasy of, I can keep the house, I'm going to be able to afford it. You get the beach house, I'll keep this house. You get this car, I get that car. That is the fantasy that everybody wants. Then you get the data. And part of this is just data collection. How much does it cost to keep your house? What is the car payment? Do you have income? How long are things going to work? So Graham is going to work with the debt ratios, credit, how this all happens for both parties so that they can then say, okay, yeah, I really did want that, but maybe I should sell the house and download. And we'll get into that a little bit more as far as we'll get in the weeds a little bit more about that as far as what exactly we're going to look at so that people might shift their mind. Ultimately, we're not here to spoil anything. We're here to inform and data collect so that informed decisions of, yeah, okay, maybe that's not the best idea, or maybe it is the best idea to keep moving with the house. And ultimately we get there.
Right. So on the mortgage side, it's, I have an interesting position there because if I'm dealing with a spouse that wants to stay in the house and they barely qualify and then they're going to have all these bills and stuff like that, who's telling them that, hey, you know what, listen, maybe it's a good idea to sell this thing and move into a right size home, right? And get the right mortgage for your situation so that you're not calling Tracey in 2 years or a year and going, I can't afford to live here. I barely can afford my groceries. I can't save any money. I can't do anything with the kids on the side because I don't have the funds that I need. So, there is a little bit of tough love and reality check, I think, when it comes to this part of it, because let's be honest. I think the kids in the home are the biggest things that come up in a divorce, right? So the home is serious and it's very emotional, and so we're going to bring we're going to try to help people in that space. Right. So really, just those previous slides were just saying, hey, listen, if there's derogatory credit, if people are ruining each other's credit, it's going to take a little while to recover from that. So in this case right here, you're looking at 2.5 years on a mortgage late to get back to your 720 credit score, or to come back to your 780 credit score. So, and even right here, short sales, foreclosures, bankruptcies, you're out of the real estate market for 7 years. So it really does have an impact, and it really is an important part of what we do. So kind of going back, and I'll breeze through this so that Tracey can get in, but we're shifting our focus from post-divorce problems to pre-consumer protection. And she's really going to harp on that when we start talking about the condition of the property and the safety that comes. If children are going to be living in this home, we want to protect them. And if there's issues with the property, whatever, if it's the roof or if it's foundation, we're going to talk about that. So really, it's about preserving homeownership eligibility for both the wife and the husband, because either one that's leaving wants to, or if they're both selling the house and they want to buy their own property, we want to make sure that we're helping them and preserving that home ownership eligibility through the education and those kinds of things. And then we know that children thrive in a home that a parent owns. So that's the end goal. We want to keep the kids in a home where they can thrive. So going back to when we can help on the divorce timeline, it's really right before mediation. Okay. And, we want to shift our role from triage to proactive, before real estate mistakes are made that make people's jobs stressful. It'd be the realtor that's got to come in after the divorce and sell the house in a bad situation, or the mortgage person that's got to try to come in and clean up, a settlement agreement that wasn't done correctly. So we want to take people from being opponents to partners with each other. What we want to do is create this business partnership between both spouses. It sounds difficult, but on the real estate side, I think we can help to do that. And then, right. Tracey, you are in.
Yeah. So essentially, where we go from here is this. So you've identified that you are going to go through a collaborative or mediated divorce. Typically, the War of the Roses scenario, we are not the people, because we're here to give the information. It's in a mediation situation where you each have your own attorneys. There's a mediator involved. You all are going to come to the table. All information is known. If you're trying to hide things from your spouse, etc., then this is probably not the best solution for you, but your attorney needs to be doing all of this for you to best represent you. That being said, there are two gaps when doing an appraisal. When we talk with attorneys, they typically do the appraisal right before the negotiation so they can get what the, quote, value of the home is. But there's two major gaps in the appraisal process. One is that there is no guarantee of the title condition, and there's no guarantee of the actual house condition itself. So if you go to the next slide, what you're going to see there is an example of the Freddie Mac statement of limiting conditions. There's a similar statement for all loan types that come through, whether you're conventional, VA, or FHA. But this is what it says. The very first one is that they are not responsible for any of the legal matters attaining to this. So, for instance, if we do title bring down early, and Graham and I are both top producing professionals in our field, so we have a lot of collaborative agreements with various title companies, et cetera, that will do this complimentary for the client. We will pull down the title, and they will see whether or not there are, how many mortgages are there? Are there any other secured debts against the property? Is there an open home equity loan that somebody said that they closed? Well, maybe they paid it off, but now you've got an open credit line. Usually they can go up to about $300,000, that if somebody had some shenanigans going on, that perhaps they were drawing down on that, taking away the value of the property. If you thought it was an $800,000 property, you thought you had a closed credit line, somebody has taken $100,000 against it, you've now eaten $100,000 into that equity. So we work with the title company early to make sure that that's not there. And as they're going through the mediation and discovery and mediation process, that joint debt hopefully can be closed out and not become a source of a ATM for a spouse that wants to create shenanigans. Second piece is the actual condition of the property itself. What a house is worth, there is market value. That's where a real estate agent comes in. We do our competitive market analysis or broker's market analysis. We prepare that and we say, okay, here's the bottom of the market, here's the top of the market, and your house is going to come somewhere in between. The appraiser does essentially the same thing, also market analysis with a replacement value analysis. That doesn't take into consideration what the condition of the property is. If you've ever bought or sold a home, there's usually a home inspection involved, as well as other things. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to call the insurance company. So if you can go over to the next slide. Sure. Because you own the home, you have access to the free title report. We're going to look at things, to go to this slide, about deferred maintenance of the property. Wait, go back. Behind walls, water damage and things like that. Go forward one. Thank you. Foundation, roof, HVAC system. We need to look at all of that because that will all impact what the actual value of the home is. So going one more slide. There we go. We're going to do the clue report. So as a homeowner, the clue report looks at two different things. It looks at the person's social security number who owns the property. So if the two of you are on title, then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at who is a frequent caller. If every single time something happens, you're calling your insurance rates are going to go up. And if you're too frequent or unnecessary, they will deem you uninsurable. The second thing that the clue report will bind to is the property address itself. CLUE report stands for the Comprehensive Loss and Underwriting Exchange, and it's available for every single person that has a social security number on file, as well as the property address itself. What we are looking for is, if you have done one claim, that's what it's for. If you've done two claims, usually within a 2 to 3 year period, now you're going to start to see your interest rate or your insurance rate go up a little bit. If you've done 3 claims, either you or your property is now a risk. So what we're looking for here is, we've all had the person knock on our door who says, oh, you know, your roof looks old, there's some hail damage, etc. I can get your roof replaced through your insurance. Great. Whole thing gets negotiated. Your roof is going to be a $19,000 replacement because you have lots of peaks, valleys, and flashings that have to happen. They strike. The insurance company approves it and sends you a $19,000 check so you can hire the roofer of your choice. If there's a shenanigan going on, the shenaniganer may go out, buy a real nice piece of jewelry for his or her girlfriend, and go take a trip and never actually replace the roof. You've now committed insurance fraud. We need to know that up front before you're going into mediation, because somebody owes you $19,000 to replace a roof so that your property can be fully insured as it's intended. So the Clue report, again, is one of those areas where it's an inexpensive, free place to go get information, but will help you pull that and navigate those pitfalls so that you understand what the insurability is with the property. It is protected information, so you can't pull it on somebody else's property, but because you own it and have insurance, we can pull it on your own property.
And Tracey, it doesn't have to be nefarious. It could be a situation where husband or wife gets the check and uses it for something different in the house. They could use it to, replace their driveway. They could use it for anything. It doesn't have to be, for, those type of scenarios. But so people just don't know, they don't know that they're committing insurance fraud. So it could just be, just an honest mistake.
Correct.
So
and it just needs to be ironed out and dealt with up front so that you don't preclude yourself from being uninsurable later.
Sure. And, the woman that created this course, she's gone around the country teaching about Clue reports and the importance of it. And I just want to say and give kudos to Tracey. She always pulls a Clue report for all of her clients. She's the only realtor I've ever met that does that. So it's really a big deal. It's very important, and it's
yeah. Case in point, we did one this past weekend where somebody actually wrote an offer. We ratified. We called the insurance company to get it, and we saw a $20,000 water loss. We pinged the seller during our home inspection period. The seller said, "Yeah, we had a toilet leak. Went all through. We had to replace all the floors, the drywall, new toilet. $20,000 later. Here's the paperwork. Done. So we have no problem." But we needed to match that up. Yeah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the actual home inspection itself. So I recommend, and to Graham's point earlier, you don't have to do a home inspection when doing a divorce. You live in your house all the time and you probably know what's going on. And as we know, you're going to get, it's never going to be perfect. That said, there are some things that are hidden. This is an example of a home inspection that we did earlier this year with someone's property. They'd been in the property for about 12 to 15 years. And sure enough, on home inspection, underneath this little tiny crawl space where the trellis is on the right-hand picture, the home inspector got in underneath there and found the crack on the left-hand side picture, which looks, to me as a bystander, would look somewhat benign. Problem is when you got into the crawl space of this is from the interior. You now have a vertical sheared crack where the foundation is actually shifted, and you're looking at, in this case, just shy of $10,000 worth of repairs to deal with this particular issue. So these sellers' net for their property just went down by $10,000 because they can't sell the property without the repair. So again, looking forward and putting this in the divorce application and mediation, if you spend the money up front, and this is one of the few places where, be penny wise and pound foolish, you need to be pound wise. Spend the money on the home inspection during discovery phase so that you can see if there's any of these really big ticket items. Because if you're banking on the proceeds as part of the negotiation on he gets the apple stock, she gets the house, and you've got something else, and by the way, $10,000 for a foundation issue is a bargain. Could have been a lot worse. So that said, all of a sudden, maybe it's not as equitable depending on what actually shows up with the home inspection. So again, I want to point out, there are some attorney firms who have their favorite home inspectors, who have their favorite appraisers. While we have our folks that we use, we can do this and help monitor this and go sit on the home inspection and work with your sellers or your couples to figure out what exactly is going to happen and get these data. I forwarded, Graham, I don't know if you have it in your email, but there is another report I've got. One of the things that most of my purchasers do is I encourage them to use my home inspector who does thermal scanning. And what he does is he runs water for 20 minutes in the property while doing the home inspection. And then after about 20 minutes or so, cold water, he then takes his UV gun and goes through the property, and he's looking for impressions of water issues in the property. Last year I had a house in Reston where we saw water dripping down from the top of the property down 3 levels in one corner all the way down. We refused to close. We bumped everything out. It ended up having to go through insurance, and it turns out that the flashing on the property had pulled away and water was seeping down and had soaked the drywall and insulation 3 stories. So, or 3 levels rather, through the house. So those are the type of things when you're in the property, you may not realize that that's the situation. But again, it is a massive investment that will impact the value of the property that you're trying to negotiate during your mediation period. So again, be informed, collect the data, and what at first seems like a really, really good idea to keep the house, now that you've considered your credit, your impact for qualification and what your carrying costs would be, when your alimony falls off, are you still going to be able to afford the house? And if your plan was hold on for it for 3 years so your child could get out of high school and then you'd sell it, are you then going to be stuck with a condition in the property that's going to cost you $10, $15, $20, $50, $100,000 to mitigate? And does that need to be negotiated through either a repair or a credit during your mediation period up front? And that's what we're here to do. Work with you to make sure you have all that information. He was going to go to the next slide, and that talks about our team. We have affiliated partners that we work with, and by affiliated partners, read people who do a really good job for us and our clients in the past. There's no money exchange, there's none of that, and we use them because they're good. We use the title company, the housing insurance brokers, the house condition and home inspectors that we use. We all come together in an a la carte fashion to work with you to get this pulled together. We kind of act as a quarterback. There's the coach, which is the attorney. The attorney sends it over to us. We plug a sheet in. We have an entire form that we can send regular updates to. The attorney directs what information they want, they don't want. If the client refuses to give it to us or can't give it to us, that gets documented with a date. We can send snapshots of how we're doing during the discovery phase so that everybody on their end can focus on child custody, assets, etc., and the real estate is being done on the side and can come in as a full package with a complete case file for full informed decisions throughout mediation.
Yeah.
So the next.
Well, I think also, if you're an attorney watching this, you're probably bored and you probably are multitasking. But the reality is that, this is a service that we provide. So also what's happening is that there's a lot of document gathering going on from your paralegal team. And in a lot of cases, you're not getting all that documentation. And so what we're really doing, and you're doing essentially, is you're designating, delegating us as document gatherers. Like as a mortgage professional, we are constantly gathering documents from people. We're really good at it. So when it comes to the house stuff, we know what to ask for. We've got a comprehensive list of things that we need for the case file that will help you guys complete it. So, I mean, when we're going in there asking for these things, we know what we're doing. We know what we're asking for. We know where to help them look for it. So all kinds of things like that. And then not all, like you said, this is a la carte. So if you know the person's going to be selling the property and you need a professional realtor that knows how to handle the divorce situations, bam, Tracey. Or if you need a mortgage professional because you know they're going to refinance, boom, right to me. You don't even need either one of our services. If you want us to help you with title, help you with house insurance, help you with the condition, we can recommend all these things. So, we're really here just as an extension of your team to help in this space when it comes to the, what they want to do with the property.
Precisely.
Yep.
So what's our next slide?
Our next slide is our ask.
There's our ask. So who do you know that's in a divorce in the discovery period that could help from these free due diligence to help gather your house documents? Whether it's a friend considering it or going through it. Again, I want to point out this is better in a mediation collaborative environment rather than a war of the roses, go for the jugular. We are helping everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I also just want to say, just test us out. Just give it a test. Give us a one. Let us run with it, show you what it looks like, and come back as a test case with you guys. And if it was successful, then we can do more. So don't think of it as yet. It's you have to do it. Think of it as just give it a test. Because I know that it's difficult when you have your procedures in place to change the process of what you're doing and how, because you've been doing it for a long time and it works. But just give it a test. Just give us a shot, and I think that we will pleasantly surprise you. There was more things that we wanted to show you, but we don't want to overwhelm you. But we are very diligent, and we've got some great stuff that we do to help. And I think one thing that we would have loved to show you was you've got an Excel spreadsheet that's like very detailed, covers every single document that we could possibly gather from them. And so when we deliver back to your paralegal, our documentation, it's very detailed, and it's basically given to them on a silver platter, so they can just slide it into the case file and have all that documentation.
Exactly. We're here for you in whatever capacity.
Right.
So Jean, did we cover everything?
I think so. You covered a lot, but if you guys want to show some more things or talk a little bit more, I have a little bit of time if you want to keep going.
We do. I did skip over. I'm having sharing issues, not kindergarten but technology. I sent Graham the home inspection report, which is fun to look at. The thermal scan is the thing that just absolutely blows my mind. We have found so many things by doing thermal scanning and home inspections. And it's saved lots of recovery and damage money to get it done up front. There it is. Yeah. So what you're seeing here, and actually if you want to blow it up so people can see it, that would be great. Sure. What you're seeing here is that the home inspector rolled in and uses a moisture meter, usually in the basement, usually in the corner where the earth is touching the foundation, and usually at a low point. And he found an 89% moisture in this basement corner. And then if you look to the right-hand picture where it's pink and purple next to it, you'll see that the moisture essentially follows along that corner. That's a cool point, and then plumes out, which is a typical signature or moisture signature. And if you keep scrolling down through the pages, you'll see where it just gets documented over and over again, where in a regular picture, that one's 99%
moisture in that wall. It's amazing.
And what's amazing about that is that was on the middle level. It wasn't even down at the ground level. It was on the middle level. There was no wetness. You've touched the wall with yourself. Your hand, you really couldn't feel it. But when we investigated it, it turned out that that little piece of flashing right there had popped off and needed to be recaulked. It became, again, nightmare. It became an HOA issue because it was a party wall between the neighbor and the owner. They had to call it up to the insurance. Of course, we had a deadline for a transaction on the line, so we had to do addenda to kick that deadline down the road, postpone closing, pay for extensions and loan locks. It got very, very expensive for the seller. Because it was not the buyer's fault that they couldn't get to closing. The seller had a material defect with the property that had to be dealt with. And if it wasn't dealt with, they'd have to disclose it to the next person. So they weren't interested in losing the purchaser. The purchaser wanted to stick around and wanted the property. They just wanted a very simple fix, caulking, flashing, and to be fixed. And then ultimately the home dried out, which it did. But you can see where that was one of those things where you wouldn't necessarily know it was happening to your property unless you had a home inspection actually happen. The other thing I can do too is I can kick you over this, Graham. I'm going to email it to you real quick while we're on the phone.
Sure.
I guess we're not on the phone here. There we go. This is the spreadsheet that he's referring to. Again, if you choose to use these services, we are one piece of a whole puzzle that you're putting together for your clients, dear attorneys and financial planners. When we've presented this and worked with financial planners in the past, they love it because ours is super detailed, and then there's a total. There's right. They're just looking for the final numbers to put into their case file sheets and their marital balance sheet to then provide the return for, again, the negotiation. So again, we are basically doing the grunt work because we do it every day and we know exactly where to look, and we can make that happen in order to have the information to give to the professionals that are working with you. So it's a nice little delegate out.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for it. But another thing too, if you're a financial planner and you're listening to this as well, so one thing that we help with is the marital balance sheet, because when you're gathering all your documents to give things, to give your report back to the attorneys, a lot of these things may not be considered. If you're not recommending the home inspection, we're not pulling title. Maybe you're not getting the actual payoff statement that would help you sort of whittle down all the numbers. There's some things that we do on the mortgage side that can help. If you're still waiting for it here.
I have one more thing to add when you're done.
Yeah.
The other issue we have too is that real estate, we are not unlike attorneys. we have to give more than one. I can't say call this one home inspector and then you only use this one home inspector. If we do that, we've set ourselves up for all kinds of liability. So I'll give you choices of people to choose from. There are lots of very good real estate agents in the world, lots of wonderful mortgage people in the world. You need to find the one that fits just right for you. So with that being said, we have a template email that you can give to clients that simply say, look, this is a service. Have your clients interview us and make sure that they're comfortable with it. This is not something that you're dictating. They don't have to use the services, but we do have template emails that are a soft introduction for your clients, and then your clients can make the decision on whether or not they want to proceed. Did you get that sheet, Graham?
No, for some reason it didn't come through. Your other one came through, but this one's lagging.
Weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
Alrighty, we'll try it again.
So it's pretty comprehensive what we do. You know, a lot of people think, well, I don't want my clients to have to do more work than they're already doing. They're super overwhelmed. There's really not much that goes into it. The home inspection, the home inspector comes, walks around, does what he does. The title, you don't have to lift a finger. The insurance, you don't really have to lift a finger. The mortgage side, you probably have to spend about an hour, 45 minutes with me, really talking about what's going on. And that way I can at least consult you in the way that you need to be consulted. And then there may be a little bit of time of gathering documents, but in most cases, you guys are requesting as attorneys already. So what we're doing is we're just taking a little bit of that stress off your paralegal's back or your back, depending on if you're doing it yourself too.
Exactly. So I resent it. Maybe it's not coming.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, so it's a detailed spreadsheet nonetheless.
Jean, any questions for us? Anything pop into your head as what you might be thinking as a consumer, what you might be thinking as an attorney?
Yeah, a few things. So I'm not a family law attorney, so I know very little, but I would think that the easier, if the family law attorney, the attorney that is handling the divorce for either side, utilizes your services, has you come in and do your complimentary assessment, it seems like it would just save everybody time and trouble. While people might need to get some documents, it sounds like you guys would be able to help with that process also. So, and it might also help the attorney to have third parties, objective third parties, which you guys would be, come in, look at the numbers, and that way they can hear somebody else say it instead of just their attorney or instead of just the opposing party's attorney.
And that hits the nail on the head, and we hear that over and over and over again, which is great. When you have a relationship with somebody that you are in the weeds with them, it's hard to sometimes accept what they're saying, even though they're perfectly qualified, they know exactly what they're talking about, et cetera. You do need that third person. It happens all the time. When I've got people saying, I need to look at this price point, and I say, great, that's wonderful. But before we go out and you fall in love with the price point that's too much, let's get qualified first. Let's go look at these numbers. And then that's when they go to the mortgage professional, and divorce is no different here. Can you keep your house? Can you not? What does it look like after your divorce? If you're paying all this alimony and your debt ratio is one thing, are you going to be able to go out and buy what you're hoping to buy? That's important. So to kick that client over to a mortgage person for the reality check, these are the loan programs. These are the down payments. You're going to have these assets. You're going to have this income. Here's your debt ratio. When it all settles, what you thought was here may be more like here. And you don't necessarily want to push the envelope. I would rather have a client walk away and not refi and sell it outright, or not purchase if it means in 3 months down the road, 3 years down the road, they're going to be broke and in foreclosure. That's not the way to go. So we can be the objective reality check for them. Here is the actual condition of your home. I have pictures of a 3-level soaked living room. This is a problem. You're going to have to fix this. You can't refute actual data, hard data. And ultimately, we can be that sounding board to bolster what the attorneys are saying to their clients.
Yeah. We're talking about equitable distribution here, right? So a house is not the same as a 401k account, right? They're just not. A house is a major liability. I mean, it has the equity, but it costs a lot of money to maintain and run that house. And things get deferred. And especially if you're in a marriage that has not been going well, usually the house suffers.
Yes.
People aren't taking care of the home in those situations, and they can have problems come up pretty quickly. Roofs that are old that need to be replaced, HVAC systems that are about to go out. Obviously you've got, problems with foundation. I'm sure there's a million other things that can be going on. So that home inspection there really is, boom, 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 boom. This is what it's going to cost. And it's just more information for that client to make that informed decision on what they want to do.
Exactly.
And have you, either of you, ever seen a situation where something pops up in the home inspection and both the parties can agree as to how it's going to be fixed, so they can either proceed to go with the plan of one person staying in the house or selling the house? I mean, does that ever happen? They say, okay, well, I'll take this much.
Right. And it's case by case. In some cases, it's like, all right, we already have this cash sitting aside. Let's just fix it. And that'll be just what it is. And that'll be deducted out of the net. And there we go. In other cases, it is a concession, where, okay, that's going to be a $60,000 fix. Great. Then we'll adjust this over here and you do the fix. And it really is case by case. And frankly, it's no different than general resale. When you're in the place, you either have to deal with it or not deal with it. But it's a consideration nonetheless. It's either a price adjustment or it's got to come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're ever going to unload it, you have to address it then. And not to mention, if you let a leaky pipe leak, it's one thing if you discover your toilet's leaking, you shut off the valve, you call your plumber, and in 24 hours it's fixed. It's a little bummer. It might be a little wet and you have to have a little valve replacement. So that's a $300 call. If you just let it go indefinitely, you may have a total water loss in your house. And that can be tens of thousands of dollars to mitigate. Mm. So if you let things go, it's going to be more expensive. Not fixing something has never gotten cheaper. It's going to end up being a price adjustment when somebody goes to sell, or an out-of-pocket expense that is going to be more expensive later. So it just has to be dealt with at the table. But yes, concessions can be made in any number of ways, whether it's repair, drop in value of the property, you get this stock instead. I mean, there's lots of different ways to handle that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it makes sense to me for everybody to be informed and make informed decisions while there's still time to do something about it.
Cool.
And, one person might not like it, or both people might not like it, but, it's better, if the person's going to stay in the house, to know potential problems with the house if they ever go to resell it, because they might not have any intention of selling it, but you never know what life's going to throw at you. So, and I'm just kind of commenting, these are important things to know. I mean, I'm going through the process right now of trying to get qualified to buy a house, and it's a lot. And I learn new things every time. So I'm sure there are a lot of things that people don't think about, especially in a divorce situation. Obviously, it's emotional and tensions are high, and it could be amicable, or as amicable as it could be, or it could be very contentious. So sometimes, those emotions might cloud some decision making.
Right. And even in the best situation in a divorce, there's going to be some ugly things that have to happen. You're going to have to discuss there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you're going to have to address all three categories. Mm-hmm. And you actually just touched on something that Graham is very good at, and has actually saved people from making pretty grave mistakes, that once things have negotiated out, from an underwriting standpoint with a loan, and that's where I'm going, he's actually helped them figure out which bucket to put it in when they've allocated assets. And I'm not going to tell them what you've done, because you can perfectly well do that. So you go.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just going to say, and even with COVID hitting, the jumbo market is completely different from where it was before.
Yeah.
And some of these lenders are requiring, massive amounts. I mean, there's nuances and guidelines to each of them. Mm-hmm. And divorce attorneys don't know what those are, so what they do is they put the property settlement agreement together, and they say, the husband plans to stay in the house and must refinance within 6 months. If he doesn't, they have to sell, right? So that's typical standard language. Well, why not just go into it knowing exactly what you're capable of doing, and then you can have specific language. I mean, that's going to stay in there, but it's even more important these days to really sit down with a professional mortgage person to figure out that mortgage, because guidelines, because of COVID, have really changed. What if they're self-employed? Citibank and Chase, some of them have just completely pulled out of doing even loans for self-employed people. or they've cut way back on the loan to value that they even allow for them to go to. So it just changed. It's just such a landscape that's constantly changing. You would just be doing, I think, a disservice to your clients without having them go through that pre-approval process with at least, if not with me, somebody,
Yeah. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that some companies completely or decided they're not going to lend to self-employed people, because that's me. That's a lot of people. I mean, just because all of us, right?
Right.
So just because, we're self-employed, that doesn't necessarily mean that, we lost our job or we're losing money, but just the fact of being self-employed is a problem. And I mean, that's just one example of something that people don't think about and didn't think about before COVID. And I mean, of course, you can't predict everything that's going to happen, but at least, talking to you guys, you can, probably do the best possible job you can, at least when it comes to the mortgage and the house and the property.
Right.
Yeah. We basically give you a snapshot of what the situation is today, at this hour, at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Your value is X, the condition is Y, and your loan application and credit score is Z. And they can then take it and go from there. But it's a problem, because I have run into that with divorce clients before, where a house spouse was a stay-at-home spouse who ultimately wanted to start their own business. Well, they better have a very crystal clear plan on how that's going to happen with the refi, owning it jointly, post, all the pitfalls of that, and then ultimately establishing income for 2 years. I mean, if they really wanted to have that photography business and videography business that they've always wanted to have, and this divorce is the time to make that happen, they better start that business right now, because that clock starts ticking. And it can be a major impediment for the refi. It can be an impediment for if they sell and try to buy. It's a big deal, and there's a lot of nuances to how they move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. I mean, when it comes to houses and property, and when it comes to money, people, can get overwhelmed, and I think sometimes just don't want to think about it. But it's so important to think about it, to talk about it, and to know going in, like, just for example, setting aside the divorce, before, like you mentioned earlier, Tracey, before going into buying a house, knowing what you're going to qualify for. Why find your dream house and, spend all this time looking at houses in a certain area that you're not going to qualify for, and there's nothing you can do about it, for X amount of time? I mean, you'll eventually find out what the problem is, and then it might take you, I mean, God knows how long to fix it. But if you talk to a professional before, you'll know if you have any issues, and if you do have issues, you might be able to do things to improve yourself. So.
Yep. And that's absolutely the case. It's all about expectation setting, and it is a complementary resource. And so really, if we can get the data to set the expectation, to set forth how to proceed with parsing things out, then we are just helping with the informed decision process for both parties. And again, this works best in a collaborative environment. So for both parties, there's no reason to not do it. You should do it.
Yeah, we sat down with an attorney, and we sat down with an attorney, and he got to the very end. He says, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't utilize this. Mm-hmm. So, and he's a very smart guy, and he just basically deducted, why wouldn't I do it?
We've seen the success with the sole proprietors, or maybe one or two partners, where resources are limited. They're excellent attorneys. They absolutely advocate and have a lot of success in the courtroom, the whole thing. But this is where we become an extension of what they're already doing to better serve their clients.
Right.
Yeah, and to everybody watching, Tracey and Graham have mentioned a number of times, this is a complimentary service. This does not cost the attorney or the client any money, so it's not correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Minus the home inspection. That part is paid.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's something that somebody else does. That's not
right.
Right. Company. Correct. So it's a complimentary service that's not going to cost the attorney money. It's not going to cost the client money. It's not going to eat into any retainer the client has paid. So yeah, I mean, any family law attorneys working with clients going through divorce should absolutely utilize it. But why not?
Yeah, mediators are great because they're we love working with mediators. Those are great referral sources for us because I think they understand.
And then the DIY.
Yeah.
Right. And then the DIY couple as well.
I was just about to ask that because I don't do this. Do people go through a mediation process without attorneys at all?
It's usually not the majority of people out there, but I actually have a personal friend that did this about 1.5 years ago, and they got along. They just shouldn't be married anymore, and they were like, okay, we just need to make it happen. So they just negotiated the whole thing, filed the papers on their behalf. I did not look at them, nor am I attorney, nor am I qualified to see whether or not it was done correctly. However, they still talk. They got through it, and they were able to do it. So in those situations,
I think the fastest growing demographic.
Right. We provide data. We don't practice law.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I should have said at the beginning, we are not giving any legal advice here. I am not giving legal advice because I wouldn't anyway, but also I'm not a family law attorney. Tracey and Graham are not attorneys. Tracey is a realtor and Graham works in the mortgage industry, lending. But what they're talking about is a service that they provide to assist not just family law attorneys, but also people going through a divorce and mediators. And it's so when I mention it's no cost to the attorney, it's also no cost to the person who might be proceeding with the divorce pro se that is without an attorney, because people certainly can and do, and everybody should be going into this by making informed decisions, whether or not they have an attorney, and probably without an attorney, I would assume it's even harder to do that. So the fact that you guys provide this service is for everybody is great.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Exactly. We're a resource. We're here.
Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you for this specifically?
You can get in touch with us directly. You and I are friends on Facebook and LinkedIn. So I'm with, the easiest way to do it is to get through our various web pages or through our names. If you literally Google Graham Pruitt, Google it. He'll pop up. Tracey, Barrett, realtor. I'll pop up. We both practice and are based in Fairfax, but do the greater Northern Virginia area. We are, if you do research divorce, real estate agent divorce loan officers, we will pop up on divorcethishouse.com. Again, that's divorcethishouse.com, because we do hold the designations of real estate collaboration specialist with a divorce designation. So it really is specific, and there's not that many of us that have done this designation. So it's pretty easy to find us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask that if most attorneys or lenders had this designation, but it sounds like they do not.
They do not. It's relatively new. It's not been around for very long, but it's a pretty intense program that Professor Kelly Murray and Wendy, the other person whose master's are prepared, et cetera. The curriculum is really robust, and it was developed with the intent to talk to and speak the language of attorneys so that we are getting them the information they need to serve their clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't make it up. It was definitely created by an attorney. So, fortunately.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So the information was created by an attorney, but this presentation is not legal advice. It's informational only.
That's right.
I got to say that every time.
Please do that. Make sure everybody's crystal clear on that. Exactly. I just put my website in the chat if that helps, as well as my content. That's the easiest way to get to myself and my team.
Yeah, I was going to say that if it's not already in there, I was going to add that later.
Well, there you go. You beat me to it.
We can go back in and add it on Facebook when we're underneath.
And as Tracey said, we are Facebook friends. So if you guys who are watching this, I've tagged Tracey and Graham, so you can
see on the web.
And LinkedIn too. You can click on them that way.
LinkedIn as well.
And we're going to make sure all their contact information is here in the chat. And if you're watching the replay later, which I know a lot of you will, based on where I'm going to be putting this video out, feel free to type a question in the comments, because that's going to live forever. So we can always, not me, but Tracey or Graham can get back to you about whatever your question is. So just because you missed the live broadcast of this, feel free to type a question at a later time and somebody will get back to you. But before we go, Tracey and Graham, is there anything else that you wanted to say or leave us with?
Just thanks so much for having us today.
Yeah. Ditto.
No problem. Yeah, so I guess.
Yeah, well, I just appreciate you putting this on, Gene. It was nice of you to do that, get the word out for the community and for people out there that may need the service. So just thank you.
And in the meantime, if you get into trouble and you need to stand in front of a judge, Gene's a pit bull and can defend you. Reach out to Gene.
I am a pit bull, so I'll take that. I've been called worse things. So
exactly. May I never have to actually.
Nice to the pit bull breed.
I know, they're lovely right up until they don't have to be. So there you go.
Exactly.
There you go. Well, thanks for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we do.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, guys. This was a very interesting and different type of webinar. When Tracey and I first talked about this, I had never heard of this before, as I'm sure probably a lot of people haven't. I don't practice in this area, but even family law attorneys, I would imagine, might not even know that they have this opportunity. So I'm going to be sending it out to the family law attorneys that I know. And if you guys ever want to do a presentation again, this presentation or a different one, I'm sure I can connect you with an audience of family law attorneys.
That would be great. We would really appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all your time. Have a good weekend and try to enjoy the sun before it gets cold outside.
Yeah, before we have a hurricane blow through.
Oh.
All right. Have a good weekend.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.